Oh yeah, cool. So I'm from Ovum. We're a global research company headquartered in London, offices all around the world, including US, West and East Coast. I'm based in Sweden, and we do a lot of cool, exciting things. So, just to set context where online video market is going, where it's coming from, if we create an artificial decade from 2013 to 2023 and look at the size of the market, we are going from less than 100 million subscribers to OTT video services. By that I mean services like Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and a whole range of other services around the world, to a billion or in excess of a billion by the end of this period. So it's a market that is very exciting to follow as an analyst. It's growing really quickly, and there are some key things that we are learning as we go along. So, up until quite recently, we have mostly talked about streaming services as something that is skewed towards younger or youngish demographics. At the same time, we've said that it's largely older demographics, or older-ish, that are more predisposed to be using pay TV services like cable and satellite and so on. Now, I would argue that that's no longer the case. OTT video, it has become a truly mainstream mass market activity, which is actually enjoyed across all age groups. Yes, it's true, streaming tends to be the under 50, and pay TV tends to be the over 40. There's some variations on this theme, of course, different markets. But I think this chart here is looking at last year, 2018, and I think what is quite remarkable is if we look at those that are aged 70 and over, across these 6 markets, more than 20% say that they have paid online video services at home. Just a few years ago, that would have been something that would have been unheard of. So there's a lot of overlap going on around TV and OTT. So actually, it's not so clear cut to say that it's younger do one thing and older do another thing. Actually, everyone's doing a bit of everything. So last year, when we asked pay TV subscribers across these 6 markets, we asked them, do you also use Netflix or any service like that? And nearly half of them said that they did. We asked people who don't have pay TV services at home if they have online video, and only 19% of those said that they have access to, or that they pay for Netflix or Amazon and services like that. So, in other words, households that only buy OTT video services are a minority if we look at household compositions. So overlap between pay TV and OTT video is a huge, big area, big theme. Taking that a bit further, we also know that there's a lot of overlap between OTT video services. More than 2/3 of everyone who stream video subscribe to Netflix. And there's also a huge overlap between those that use Netflix and Amazon. Here in the US, 2/3 of Netflix subscribers have access or pay for Amazon at home, whether that's Amazon Prime or as a standalone service. And of course, other services on a global scale, there are hundreds of other services, but they are not as penetrated as the big 2 US services. So we feel that online video is driving quite interesting change in audience buying behavior. Some analysts call it SVOD stacking. There's a few other terms being bandied around as well. We're talking about self-bundling, because it's not just video, it's TV as well. Self-bundling of subscription services. It's a big thing that we're seeing. More than half of all video services take out multiple concurrent subscriptions. So at any time they will have, say, Netflix +1, +2, sometimes +3. Average across these 6 markets is 2.25 services per household. I know my household, I have 2 kids and a wife. We have 4 different asphalt services. I'm an analyst, so maybe it's not normal, but you can see there's some variation on this theme. China, where services tend to be cheap, or much cheaper than in West. Over 3 services per household, and then going down to Brazil, which is just over 1. So in other words, majority of online video subscribers buy more than 1 service at any time, and this is giving rise to a change in audience buying behavior. So we feel, we've looked at this in quite some detail. It's a new area for us to really try to go deep down into a household level and look at what kind of combinations or what's the composition of households today. And excuse me. And it's very, very interesting and very, very complicated. So I'm just going to describe this in basic terms. But thinking about 10 years ago, you either bought TV or you didn't. You were paid TV households and free households, or free basic TV households. Since then, of course, OTT has come in. Some markets we've seen general disenchantment with pay TV, particularly in the US, but also in some other mature markets. And it's leading to different makeup of households and a further polarization of those that buy TV and video and those that don't. This is, of course, looking at the US. The most dominant TV household here has both pay TV and OTT video. And the growth of that element of the market is reducing the proportion that only have pay TV or households that are satisfied with just one type of subscription service. So there are some implications of this analysis, which I think can be seen as quite controversial. I put here the big line, headline, that OTT video is an unsustainable, pure standalone business. By that, what I mean is take away TVs, whether they're paid for or free basic, there really isn't any market for OTT video. And I'll explain that a little bit more. So, start. Excuse me. Thank you. So, just gonna grab some water. Right. So, if we look at the greater picture, the cord cutters, those that don't pay for TV but have online video services, I would argue it's just a small niche sector so far. 5% of US households. Look at those that have OTT video and free basic TV, 4% of market. To combine, that's 10%. So in other words, it's a very, very small area here in the US that can be described as the cord cutters or cord nevers. Yet, I think the industry has been very concerned about the threat of the cord cutter and the younger people sort of not paying for pay TV. But on a global picture, we're seeing this. So overall, pay TV households are growing, but they are doing so with OTT video services in combination with pay TV. OTT video, similarly, huge rise in numbers, but it's driven by households that have combinations of pay or free TV. Look at the arrow, that's the standalone OTT video, those that simply take Netflix services. It's nothing, you know, it's a very small area of our households combinations. So, perceived as a threat, pay TV has had to reinvent itself to combat, challenging markets and audience buying behavior. We came up with a term called subscription linear, or SLIN, to describe OTT video services that are what's that?
Emergency over.
Okay. So SLINs are services from pay TV operators generally, or companies that have an interest in or primary business in pay TV. Three broad categories: skinny bundle services, direct-to-consumer services and sports services. So OTT video services are evolving. Last year, or in the last 12 months, we've seen the number of SVOD services. Those are pure services like Netflix, and there are now more SLIN services than SVOD. So SLIN, again, is the sort of TV-type services. So in the US, 60% are SLIN services versus SVOD. I know this doesn't mean necessarily that consumers are taking up those services faster, but the sheer number of newer platforms that are being released tend to be subscription linear rather than SVOD. So what I've done here is quite misleading in a way, but I think it's quite interesting anyway. So I've stacked the number of pay TV subscriptions in the US with the number of SVOD subscriptions and subscriptions to SLIN services. Stack them together into a 100% stacked bar chart. And it shows, I think, in a sense, how audience behavior is evolving. Starting beginning of this decade, pay TV is evolving towards OTT, and more towards the end of this decade, or into the 2020s, OTT is evolving from SVOD towards SLIN. Now, yes, putting the numbers like this, not as a 100% stacked bar. SVOD, of course, leads. That's driven by the huge popularity of Netflix and Amazon, Hulu, and services like that. Pay TV is largely flat, going down marginally, and SLIN services are an emerging market that is starting to grow. So we feel that in the next few years, the number of SLIN subscriptions in the US are going to exceed pay TV subscriptions. Of course, there's overlap. I began by talking about an essential coexistence between pay TV and OTT, and that is certainly going to continue to be one of the key trends. Not all SLIN services are designed to be pay TV replacement products, but some are. I said in the beginning that OTT video is set on a collision course with pay TV. By that, I mean towards the mid-2020s, late 2020s, as skinny bundle type services or services that aggregate OTT video services, as they continue to grow. I think we're in a real threat. There's a real threat for pay TV services. And we feel that the trend is moving away from a pay TV plus Netflix type scenario towards a SLIN plus Netflix scenario. And by that, I'm abruptly ending. I think we might have time for a few questions.
Sure. I'll start. Tony, so does that mean that pay TV will eventually just erode away?
Not quite. I mean, pay TV is evolving into OTT. Okay. So these terms are becoming quite, yeah.
So OTT can't survive without pay TV, and pay TV can't survive without OTT.
For sure.
And they're merging into the same thing at some point.
One of the terms that last year was quite popular at events was post-OTT, right? Okay. Everyone's doing everything. Everything is available on every platform.
Right.
So.
Okay. Questions from the audience? I think
Hi.
Yeah. Over there.
Have you, in your market research, have you seen how this goes along with housing market differences? So there's been several reports showing that more people, younger generations at least, are opting to rent versus buy. And your OTT allows you to take those with you anywhere versus if you move down the street, now you're no longer a Comcast customer, you're a AT&T customer, and that ties you in and the potential option to move within 6 months if you need to. What have you seen from a trends? Has that gone? Is that parallel or is that different?
That's a very interesting question. Short answer: no, we have not looked at that in the way that you're describing. But for sure, OTT video, as you say, it's portable. So you can take your services with you. But so are pay TV services. becoming to, with multi-screen services that you don't have to be in your house to access those services. So I suspect the impact of those type of things are not going to be key, possibly. Yeah.
Another quick question from the audience?
There's one there at the back. No?
All the way in the back? One of the things at big events like this is we end up making Kelsey do a lot of walking. She gets her steps in.
Are there historical reasons why the age demographics for OTT skew so much younger in Australia and Germany compared to the US and China?
I think a lot of it is driven by what time services become available. US has been ahead of the international markets in terms of services being made available. So potentially that's part of the reason. For example, looking at things like Amazon Video, it's only been available in Australia for about a year. But every market clearly has its own trends. I can talk forever about that, but I don't think that's going to be relevant to the questions. But I think it's largely driven by when services become available.
Maybe Australians and Germans have better things to do than watch TV?
Possibly.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay. One more quick question, and then Tony will be here afterwards, so we'll be able to get him.
For sure.
What kind of service or what kind of content is driving SLN, and how is it different from linear pay TV?
Yeah, so it tends to be pay TV type content. I mean, SLIN is it's a very catch-all phrase. It takes in services from all sorts of different things. So it can be content that is produced specifically for an online platform, but it's also content that a pay TV operator would normally have on their pay TV platform. So it varies. When we began doing categorization or classification of OTT video, we were looking more towards services that did a linear delivery of content, live streaming, live channel feeds, that kind of stuff. But we're seeing that most of these services are hybrid in the sense that they both have on-demand and linear. And there's various case studies that goes into that looks at how consumers take those services. Some services do better on linear delivery of content, some do worse. But content-wise, it tends to be the same, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have to leave it there, but please join me in thanking Tony,